perfect practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you practice the wrong things, you make the wrong things and patterns permanent. We have to understand that our beliefs drive our behavior. Our habits drive our behavior. Well, what if we switched? Does your income determine, or is your income determined by your brain? What do you think could get in your way of earning more income? What do you think can get in your way? What does it mean when your brain is locked? Right? I have been doing a lot of research lately, specifically around the latest understanding of what our brain is doing on a day-by-day basis. So how you were raised can lock your brain. One of the things that's really important to understand is what I call our neuromechanics, right? Neuromechanics. How does our brain work, right? Why would we even want to know how our brain works? Well, the same reason you probably want to know a little bit about how your car works, right? If something's not working perfectly to your car or in your car, that's not going to work well. Do you know what a governor is? I want you to think about this for just a moment. Imagine you have a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a Rolls Royce or whatever your favorite high-end car is. You choose, okay? And let's say that car can go 200 miles an hour or 320 kilometers an hour for our European and our Asian friends who are on the metric system. If there's a governor on the car, then even though the car can go 200 miles per hour, a governor stops the car at, let's say, 100 miles an hour. So the car has the capacity and the ability to go faster, but if there's a governor on it, then it will not go any faster than the setting. So it doesn't matter how hard you press on the gas, it won't go faster. Why? Because in essence, the ability to go faster is locked. Does that make sense? Is that a good visual for you? So a governor is a limiter, right? It limits, and it can be set at the factory or through a mechanic, or if you know how to do it yourself, you can set it. Well, when we talk about, unlocking your brain to unlock your income, is it possible that you, me, and everybody has a governor, all right, on how much they're currently making, even though the ability to earn more is there? Is that possible? So why is it that some people earn 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 100 times more than others? Right? Why is it that there's certain doctors that earn 10 times more than other doctors in the same industry? Engineers, graphic artists, every single job, there are people that earn different amounts, right, for the same job, right? But there's also people who have governors, okay, on that allow them to have, let's say, a job, but also they start other businesses or they do other revenue generating activities. Is it possible that when we become conditioned, because we're born, right? Hold on. When we're born, right, we have our brain, and our brain isn't wired or conditioned other than the autonomic nervous system's neural networks and conditioning. We aren't born with, Yosef is going to make $50,000 and John's going to make $20,000 and Mary's going to make $1 million and Josephine is going to make $5 million and Neil Vince is only going to make $10,000. We're not born with that governor for income, right? So if we're not born with a governor for income, for how much we will earn, then is it possible that the way that our brain creates, its own governors for our weight, for our health, for our income, for our relationship, for our career, for our business, is it possible that you and I are only limited by the settings or the conditioning or the programming or the brain's software that we have developed and reinforced over time? Is it possible that the very nature of how our brain works is once we are conditioned, right? Once there's a setting, that's the governor for our income. Is it possible? What do you think? So is it possible? So when we understand, okay, so my brain, okay, when I am born, is basically, an open book, shall we say, and then through the lessons of my parents, my teachers, what I read, what I see, what my friends, parents maybe earn, what the career that I've chosen earns, what the job or business in people in that industry earn, we create this collective paradigm, it's called, right? A collective understanding and awareness and expectations for the income that we earn. And once that's locked in, we then repeat, right? We then repeat the patterns and the patterns reinforce. And is it true that repetition, okay, is our practicing, right? And the practicing is what makes the neural networks and paradigms more permanent, right? So we, in essence, are coming in as an open slate when we're born, and then what happens? We become conditioned by our environment and by the meaning that we give things. So even though we can use our imagination to imagine earning more, having more, being more, giving more, sharing more, experiencing more, we can imagine that. The imagination center in the brain is limitless, but the belief center in the brain, the habit center in the brain, all right, is not limited. Once we develop the settings, our brain locks, and then what does it do? It then repeats patterns. Does that make sense? Right? So does that make sense? First, fundamentally, does that understanding of a governor on each of our brains? We're not born with any amount of money that we're locked into or the lifestyle that we're locked into. But then between our environment and the meaning that we've given things and the information that we've gathered, we develop these ideas or these paradigms. But those paradigms that get locked in our subconscious mind may fight, and it's not really fight, but compete with our imagination, where we see ourselves living a better life. We imagine, we feel that we're capable of more. So, if you're not born, okay, with a certain level of intelligence, we have emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, right? Spatial intelligence, mathematical intelligence, creative intelligence, and it's all different for different types of people. But we can upgrade our knowledge and skills and intelligence throughout our lives, right? So yours and my brain, we've discovered something new in the last, let's say, 20 years. Right? How many of you have heard of the term called neurogenesis or the term neuroplasticity? Neurogenesis or neuroplasticity. If neurogenesis is true, which it is, or neuroplasticity is true, which it is, that means that even though we may have a governor, okay, a limiter, a software, is it possible to upgrade the software? Like if you have a mobile phone, right? Do you upgrade your mobile phone software and apps? If you have a computer, do you offer or upgrade your software on your computer? Well, of course. Well, if you have a brain, is it possible that the years and years and years of training and conditioning, okay, has created these neural networks and patterns that have become soft-wired, not hardwired, soft-wired? What does that even mean? Well, if you think about your brain, and let's imagine you have 100 billion marbles. Okay, now I'm using marbles instead of brain cells. And those brain cells, okay, don't come connected to each other. Neuroplasticity just means that the brain is plastic in the sense that it can make new connections. The connections that are reinforced go from initial conscious effort and networks or connections that are weak. But if we practice those connections, if we repeat those connections, whether they're language patterns, emotional patterns, or behavioral patterns, any pattern that we repeat, what happens to the pattern? Does it get weaker or stronger? Think about it, right? Think of software in your brain. Does the pattern that you repeat and reinforce get weaker or stronger? Think about it a little bit differently. Let's say you have a muscle, okay? And you work out that muscle, okay? Does the muscle get stronger or weaker? Right? It gets stronger. Well, if you look beyond the muscle and you look at the fibers break up and then the fibers rebuild stronger. That is how muscles get stronger. Well, what about neuromuscles? Right? What about neuromuscles? What about your neuromuscle of focus, your neuromuscle of attention, your neuromuscle of self-esteem, your neuromuscle of awareness, your neuromuscle of self-worth? What about your beliefs? Aren't those just patterns? Neuromuscles, some are strong, some are weak, some are positive, some are negative, some are empowering, some are disempowering, but you weren't born with them. You were not born with them. So, if neuroplasticity is true, which means that all the way to the time we die, our brain is creating new patterns. The patterns that we reinforce get stronger. And let's say we have RIS1 ZAG, yes, the neurons that fire together, wire together. The neurons that are wired together that we reinforce override the older patterns. So the question, if my brain is soft wired right now with the settings for how much I earn, the lifestyle I live, my health, wealth, relationships, career, business, right? If my brain, the soft wires, right, are encoded right now, right, are causing me to think, feel, and behave in patterns that are easy to fire because I've done it for 20, 30, 40 years, is it possible to deactivate or unlock, okay, their natural propensity to fire easily because I'm habituated to that and I expect that to happen? Is it possible to then unlock our brain and upgrade our software? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think we're on the right track? Does this make sense to you, right? So if you can change and if you can upgrade your software, then how do you do that? Like, how do you do that, right? So think about this. Can you use, let's say, affirmations daily, okay, that you read or listen to or run your hands across to create a new pattern or to enforce a new pattern? Can you just use affirmations, declarations, promises, prayers? Can you visualize, okay, to simulate what it is that you want to create so that you develop a pattern? Now, if it's true, pay close attention, if it's true that the patterns that we reinforce, auditory patterns, visual patterns, emotional patterns, thought patterns, behavioral patterns, the patterns that we reinforce become dominant patterns. If I was to walk every day, if I was to jog or do yoga or Pilates or meditate or if I was to eat healthy every day, or if I was to focus, on money-making activities every day, if I was to focus on upgrading my beliefs, upgrading my habits, upgrading my behaviors every day for 30 days, 100 days, 200 days, 500 days, whatever it is, wouldn't those patterns become dominant? Right? So how do we unlock our brain when we have been conditioned and trained to believe and feel and expect? And it's easy for us, right? It's easy for us to just keep being who we are. Why? Because our brain likes safety and comfort zones, and our brain wants to conserve energy. So because it's looking to conserve energy, at the same time that it's predicting the behavior, predicting the outcome, predicting what may happen, and it's just gotten used to it, we need to be really good at interrupting, disempowering, or weak neuromuscles and creating empowering new ones. Now, some of you are asking, well, how do I do this? Right? So how do we do this? Well, I want you to imagine this, okay? Let's use a different analogy for a moment. If you were out of shape, physical shape, okay, how would you get back in shape? Like, what would you do? Let's be realistic, logical. If you're out of shape, you've been out of shape, you're overweight, you're not as healthy as you can be, right? What would you do if you made a commitment to be in shape? Okay, right? If you were committed to being in shape, let's talk about physically right now, what would you do to break the pattern, the software? So somebody says you could diet, you can exercise, you can sleep well, right? Get 6 to 8 hours of sleep so you reduce your cortisol levels and reduce your leptin levels. So diet, go to the gym, visualize, motivate. Willie says start gradually, right? You can create a vision board and see yourself, right, in shape. Right? You can start with small steps. You can get an accountability partner. You can join a gym. You can hire a coach. You can ask a family member or friend if she or he would like to, start small so you can develop the habits, Magic Touch 321, right? So what are habits? Habits are automatic combinations of thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, and behaviors that are all automatic to do without thought. But to get to a habit, right? To get to a habit, we have to start, all right, with how we think, right? We have to continue with how do we feel, motivated or unmotivated? Well, how do we get motivated? How do we stay motivated? Then we need to know what are the behaviors that we want to take. So we want to work on an inner game and an outer game. So all of my students, for example, all my private clients, whether I'm working with a CEO or an athlete or a homemaker, doesn't matter. I ask them to commit to 100 days, okay, to develop a new pattern that they can reinforce. So do you think it's reasonable? Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's reasonable to say to yourself that I'm going to commit to 100 days to give myself the best chances of a solid foundation that I could build upon? So instead of thinking that I'm going to change a result or change a habit that I've had for 10, 20, 30 years in a weekend or in a week or two or three, that's just unrealistic. Do you think that if we just change the expectation and we said, okay, I'm going to do it fast, but I'm not going to do it so fast that I don't sustain the thinking, the emotions, and the behaviors. So here's what I want to ask you, right? If you're committed to an outcome that you don't just want to achieve and then stop, right? Then why not commit to a process that you can continue? And people will do things for either a reason, a season, or a lifetime. A reason, a season, or a lifetime. Here's what we know, okay? Let's say you've been earning a certain amount of income for the last, 10 years, all right, within range, and you want to maybe double or triple your income, isn't it worth it to be disciplined to sustainable change versus, rapid change that goes away? If we are creatures of habit, then why not get really good at develop empowering, constructive, positive habits? Why not get good at upgrading our own mental and emotional and behavioral software so that once we do it, we can just sustain it because we set a new expectation for ourselves? There's too many people, out there teaching, fast food thinking, lose all the weight in 7 days. Well, you're going to gain it all back because most of the weight you lose is water, right? Let's see how much money I can make this weekend. Well, that's great, but you're not going to sustain it because the habit is not there. This is why people who win the lottery lose it within 3 years, and people who lose money that they've made it gain it back within 3 years because they have the neural pattern of the behavior, of the emotions, of the strategies. That makes sense, right? Perfect practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you practice the wrong things, you make the wrong things and patterns permanent. Does that make sense? So let's get rid of practice makes perfect. No, perfect practice makes perfect. So the first thing we need to know is, what is the practice? What are the practices, right? So if you think about your brain as an organism that is changing every single day, why not deliberately use how the brain works so that you can make the change easier and faster? I didn't say fast and easy. I said easier and faster. If this is the most powerful organism in the whole universe, and you own one, right? I say this every week, right? If you own one, then why not learn how to use it better, right? And so when I see a question over here, Rashid, I think you just asked that. So how do you unlock, your brain to make more income, right? How do you unlock? Let's see if we can do this. How about, based on, what I've shared for the last 27 minutes, why doesn't everybody type in one thing that you can do to unlock your brain for earning more income? And I'll give you one right now, all right? All right, so here is one thing that you can do. What if every day when you woke up, you did this, but before you did this, I want you to do this. So what if you said, you write out, on a sheet of paper on your computer, all right, I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that I am now earning. I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that I am now earning, and put a number there. I'm now earning whatever. Let's say you're making $10,000, whether it's a day, a week, or a month. I'm now earning $20,000. I'm now earning. And then in the very next step, you started to see yourself earning that amount of money. You started to see yourself and how you felt. You start to see yourself and how many people you would impact. You start to see yourself as you upgraded your knowledge and your skills, and you developed, and you started to feel proud, and you started to feel in alignment with making that amount of money. So you started to visualize. Why? Because visualization is simulation, and you start to fire off the neurons in your brain, right? You start to fire off the neurons in your brain. The neurons that fire together will wire together. That's part one. Then, what would you need to believe? What would you need to believe, all right, in order to earn twice as much money? What would you need to believe about yourself, right? What would you need to think? And then, what would you need to do that day, right? That week, that month. All right, so in my trunk, When you set a goal, like you just said, I'm so happy now earning $2 trillion company. When you set that goal and you haven't built $1 million company, your brain deletes it because it activates the uncertainty and fear centers. So set a goal that's just outside of your comfort zone, all right? Just outside of your comfort zone that scares you a little bit, but also encourages you and inspires you. So what would you need to believe? What would you need to do? What would you need to think? And then what skills would you need to upgrade? Whose help would you need in order to make that a reality? So we go from ideation or imagination. We go from ideation and imagination, which is the Einstein part of the brain, all right? And then we ask ourselves all those other questions so that now we could put a path towards that, right? And so here's my question for you. Are there people in your industry, job or career or business that are earning twice as much as you are? Whether it's in their career, whether it's through investing, whether it's selling their product, knowledge, skills, or whatever. Are there people who are already earning twice as much? The answer is, of course there are. So why not you, right? So we have to understand that our beliefs drive our behavior. Our habits drive our behavior. Well, what if we switched our beliefs? What if we switched our habits? What if we upgraded the knowledge and skill required to match the income that we want? So there's something I'm going to leave you with, right? And that is this. In order to achieve 2 or 3 or 4 times more income and get your brain unlocked, you have to create an identity to match that destiny. You have to create an identity to match that destiny of the income and the lifestyle and the feelings that you want. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So we've been talking about how to unlock your brain to unlock your income. Would you mind sharing this video if you know of somebody that can enjoy it? You know, hit the share button, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, and pay it forward to somebody else. My goal is to help create another 100 millionaires in the next 12 months. And so we're doing a lot of free training like this. Great to have you all. Thank you for sharing this in advance. And storytelling, awesome, awesome, awesome. Have an awesome day. And we'll put the link in the Facebook feed and also in the Instagram where my bio is for the Brainathon on Saturday. All right? Bye, everyone. Have an awesome day. Hey, this is John. And if you liked that video, watch the next video because it is packed with things that you can do right now to achieve success way faster than ever before.